Welcome. My name is Tsao-Lin Moy, and I will be hosting today's Facebook Live. And I'd like to thank the American Acupuncture Council for providing these Facebook Lives, and hopefully they're going to be very interesting for you. I'm very excited about today's episode, and I really want to send a shout out to a friend of mine, Josh Corporal, and another one, Neil Gordon, because it was having a conversation with them over last week that then prompted me to talk about Chinese medicine in a way that uh, we can teach our patients, and also for us to be much more creative in the way we think about what it is that we do. So let's go to the first slide. All right. So the topic today is building a Chinese medicine kit and how to use something like a fast food restaurant to make medicines when you're out on the road. And it's something I call MacGyvering. If you're depending on your what generation you are, MacGyver was a TV show, and he would find himself in these predicaments and have to be very creative about getting out of his predicaments or using whatever resources were there. So what I'm going to cover are a few of those formulas. Yeah, tell us where you guys are watching from. I'm in New York City, Union Square. So feel free to type in the chat, where you're from. So the first, what I'm going to talk about are, some formulas, some basic formulas that all of you probably know them. And you can also teach your patients. I'm a very big advocate of, giving this information so your patients can actually learn how to take care of themselves, especially early stage and acute, right? Early stage prevention. Hello, Brooke from Kauai, Hawaii. Oh, I love it. Yeah. And Sharon from Long Island. Thank you. Thank you. So another part will be kind of building your kit. Another topic, I love instant soup, which is an ancient Chinese formula. Big, like, what is that? And then also some, what to do, with fast food restaurants and how you can actually make Chinese medicine. And then you being a MacGyver, like creating your own creative hacks. Okay. So here we are. When you wish you had your Chinese medicine cabinet, and really what you have is, you're on the road, whatever you've packed. Okay, so this list will be, available on the replay, the formulas, and some miscellaneous supplies. I love the Yuping Feng San, the jade windscreen. That is just in case anybody kind of forgot their. Oops, I just dropped forgot their herbal basics. Really, the very initial stages of when you think you're getting sick, kind of like when you're having a premonition, and that's what you would want to take right away. The Bian Pian for that kind of stuffy nose. The Archentong, I love that, also for congestion. Very famous, the Yinchao Sun, which I'm gonna, yes, the Yinchao Sun, which I'm gonna kind of go over a few other things with it. The Guager Tong, which is the cinnamon decoction. Bu Fei Tong, tonifying the lungs. That's when you have the chronic cough. The Pipa Gao, or the Bei Mu Gualo San, which is a syrup, right, that has the loquat in it. If you're on the road and you're overeating, you may need something for digestion. The Bao He Wan, for the overconsumption of food, when you're not home to cook those organic meals. Then we have also the Shenling Bai Ju Tong, for that you get sick with diarrhea. You really need to, especially if you're traveling overseas, something other than Imodium. The classic Yunnan Baiyao for internal bleeding or bruising. I mean, this is like arnica on steroids. a Dida Jiao, or even like a white flour for like bruising, topical bruising, pain patches, emergency, which is great for replenishing electrolytes, definitely a probiotic. This is going to help with your digestion. Again, when you're traveling, you really need to make sure that you have a very healthy immune system. I love to bring kinesio tape to have that because it can double up as a great ace bandage. Magnets, the little the Korean hand magnets, and a little mylar blanket for heat. That's always great. So these are like kind of this is like a basic kind of a thing I like. You can pick and choose which are going to work for you, and really like think about like how you would be able to use them in an everyday setting. Okay. So here's this thing: instant miso soup with the tofu and scallions. And this is where I was having this conversation, and I had it with somebody else too, who was traveling to South America. They were going to be doing Acupuncturists Without Borders, and I would hear that every time someone would go on these trips, they were like getting some kind of parasite, some kind of dysentery situation, not a lot of available. And so I would say, like, bring some instant miso soup, right? It's like got the miso in it, which has the probiotics, fermentation. It's got a little bit of the tofu, and tofu is considered a complete, like a full vegetarian type of protein, right? And then the scallion is also great for the nose and the broth, a little bit of salt because you could be losing some salts and you need to retain the fluids. So this, interestingly enough, I looked, I said, oh yeah, this is part of the Song Chur Tong, which is the scallion and prepared soybean decoction. So instead, like, where would you get it? Okay, go to the supermarket. Most supermarkets actually have, this instant miso soup. And some of them also will have the seaweed. And seaweed is really good for detox, right? And also it has a little bit of iodine. Nothing wrong with that. And what it treats, so this is in the Materia Medica, it's the very first stage of that external wind invasion, that mild fever and chills, little stuffy nose, the headache, the thin white tongue coat, the floating pulse. All right. But if you're out, you just need to know that, hey, if you don't have the Yu Ping Feng San, this is what you would take, right? Now, the interesting thing about this particular miso soup is the formula comes from a book that's called The Emergency Formulas to Keep Up One's Sleeve. This is from the Jin Dynasty, and by the practitioner was Ge Hong, a natural scientist, Taoist expert, and really a pharmacologist. And so when we think about Taoism, I'm going to go off on a tangent here, is we're thinking, oh, it's like religion. But Taoists were always also looking for how to extend life. We're always looking for immortality. So what's going to show up is really like things to continue to help your health, right? Okay, foods. We could do an entire segment on foods, but what I would say easy is tea. Bring with you teas. You can bring dried mushrooms. Again, the miso soup, some ginger candy, preserved plums. I was in a supermarket in Chinatown, and I'm looking at these traditional kind of candies, which are actually like orange rinds with salt, sugar, a little ginger. So they're sour. They're like sour plums. And those are great for digestion. A little dry in my office here. Okay, so what can we find at something like a Walgreens? Chinese medicine at Walgreens. Well, the formula Yinchao Sun which again combined with Yu Ping Feng San. Now, this we know as practitioners was part of some of the strategy for treating COVID, right? If you've been following some of the formulas. And the classic, really, what we're looking at is the two herbs, which are actually flowers, are the honeysuckle and the forsythia. Now, if you, and I've said this to my patients, if they don't have the Yinchao Sun, the closest thing to get is airborne. And the ingredients, it's very tiny on there, has a lot of the ingredients that are in Yinchao, and in particular, the honeysuckle and the forsythia, right? So this is something where you can go to a Walgreens. They're going to have it in a supermarket now. So you just read the label. There's also the Vitex, the chaseberry. I think there's licorice in there as well. Okay, so creative hacks and resourcefulness. So one of the things that I want to impress upon is, we in our modern society have become like really complacent with our idea of what medicine is, right? What's really happened is there's a lot of pharmaceuticals, but the world itself has not really changed, right? We still get sick. We are still very much vulnerable to serious viruses and pandemics, right? And what's happened is, unless it comes from a particular place, we don't even recognize what it is. So a lot of the things that are used in Chinese formulas, like ginger, cinnamon, clove, hot peppers, garlic, those things have now, you can find them in the baking section. Right. So if you need to like make something like, oh, where am I going to get ginger? I can't find it. There's no super. You can find it's like freeze dried. It's just like the package has changed. Right? And the thing about going back to Geng He, he was an expert in natural science, right? Plant medicine. And he actually attached more importance to experimentation. He's the one that wrote a 100-volume tome, The Jade Case Formulas. So anything that's in a jade case means it's very important, right? You got a golden cabinet or a jade case. But he was doing this based on his own understanding of Chinese formulas and folk medicine that he would really collect. So here we have, someone who has access to all like volumes and volumes of medicine, just like us. We've got the internet, we've got Dr. Google, we've got a lot of it. And but also he was looking at, hey, what's actually really working out in the world? And so from there, he wrote 101 formulas to keep up one sleeve. Now remember, they had these long sleeves, right, that they could put stuff in. So that means these were important, right? In the ancient times, anybody that would get sick, it could be really like death, right? If they didn't recover. Now, one of the things that's very interesting, the more I started like looking into like, who is this person? I mean, hey, we're thinking alike. I'm telling my friend, okay, if you're in an emergency, this is what you do. Get out your instant soup, right? And suddenly I'm reading like, wait a second, the same formula. It comes from a book called Emergency Formulas to Keep Up One Sleeve, or in your glove compartment, or wherever you're going to be, in your suitcase, in your little makeup bag, or right. But one thing that he noted, and this is a very interesting thing, we're talking about Jin Dynasty, 266, 300 AD, right? We're looking at, he noted that the herb Qing Hao, which is the herba artemisia, known as wormwood, using that juice to treat malaria. In the 1970s, artemisiin was actually extracted from the wormwood by Chinese scientists. And this in 2015, this scientist got the Nobel Prize in Physiology, or medicine, it says, was awarded to Professor Yu Tu for her key contribution to the discovery of artemisinin. Now, this is where we're looking at this stuff is everywhere, right? And we as practitioners, we have access and understanding to what there is. The thing is that we're not recognizing it, that it's still around us. The world has not changed that much in terms of the natural world. Things get packaged differently. We look so much to, if it comes in a little container in a pill, or backed by, let's say, science or pharmacy, that it's got to be powerful. The thing is that we have these things that we can still do even if there isn't an apothecary that's near us. We have to be creative, and hopefully at the end you're going to like this and you're going to see it. Okay, so necessity leads to invention. This is really applying what you know by observation and resourcefulness. And in case anybody was born, I don't know, in the 90s, and didn't get to see this guy, MacGyver, if you I go back and you'll see like wild stuff that he would do to get out of these situations he'd find himself in. And I look at, that's the same kind of energy and creativity that we need to be thinking about. Like, what could we use? One thing that I would say, during the pandemic, people got really creative. They were making grilled cheese sandwiches on using an iron, right? And poaching eggs in, like in a water kettle, right? So this was, something that we need to continue to use that energy, because otherwise we're going to get very stuck and complacent in how we're treating people, and really like recognizing and observing what is in front of us, and simple solutions. Now on the list, one of the things that was on there was the cinnamon decoction, right? That's the Gwager Tong. And that formula is a fantastic formula, right? Because it's for, muscle pain, neck and shoulder, when the cold, you're getting sick and you feel it like in your neck and your back. But it's also a great formula for muscle cramping. And I've actually given this formula to some of my patients who do triathlons. One of their problems is they get muscle cramping. The chief ingredient in there is the cinnamon. And cinnamon is known as a vasodilator, especially to the capillaries. So how do you get, blood circulation into your toes and your feet? Cinnamon. That formula is also great if you have cold in the stomach. Because cold in the stomach, it's another formula, which is basically the Gwager Tong plus extra ginger and extra of the maltose. So here we are, the MacGyver hack, making some fire cider. I know fire cider has been out all over the internet, and it's made with like horseradish, garlic, onion, apple cider vinegar, hot peppers. So there are many different recipes for it. But if you're out on the road and you need to make yourself like a quick little, let's knock this thing out, you've got horseradish. And just so you know, I picked the most common, it's not organic horseradish, it's not organic honey. I just picked the ones that you most likely might see at like a Outback Steakhouse, or someplace, if you're, a fast food place. And just as an aside, if you're ever really looking for super clean bathrooms on the road, McDonald's, better than Starbucks, right? So a lot of these places, you're going to find these condiments that are here. There's the vinegar, there's the honey, there's the hot sauce, horseradish. If they don't have it, you can probably find the wasabi. You find those little packets. If you want to make a little use a little marmalade that has the little bits of the orange peel, sometimes with some honey, that's something too for settling your stomach, right? This is like using the chen pea, right? Or the ching pea to help with digestion. And so this is like something, you get a bunch of these packets, you get a little hot water, you could, make a little decoction yourself, drink it down or spoon it down, and it's going to help with like a sore throat. And then also, the horseradish stuff is going to go up to the nose, right? So all of these things actually have many of these antimicrobial, antiviral properties. And the thing is that there's not necessarily a supermarket, and you're not going to start, grading horseradish. You can just get one of these packets. And this is really, we're talking about kind of emergency situations. But if you've got a patient there and you can just say, go to the Outback Steakhouse, or go to the Five Guys, I don't know, hamburger joint, or someplace, ask for, the honey packets or the hot sauce or all of that stuff. Because most of the time they give you too much, right? Anyway. Home Depot and your backyard. So getting back to that combination of the honeysuckle and the forsythia, right? Sometimes it's in your backyard. If you can't find it, Home Depot or gardening center actually carries these plants. And so realistically, if you needed to, you stop by a home garden center and grab a few branches, right? Or the dandelion is weeds. They're all over the place. And so these are things you might be hiking, and start having scratchy throat, just trying to figure out, like, oh, where can I go? You're like, it's right there. One thing that I have to say is dandelion is pretty distinct, so you're not going to end up picking something that is uh, poisonous. You need to know what it looks like, right? And honeysuckle is it's obvious what it is. Now, things like plants, as we know, like honeysuckle in particular, and a lot of the flowers that are in our formulas that we use, remember that there are bees that come around, right? And they pollinate. Now, what makes honey so immune boosting? Because they're getting all of the properties from these plants, and then it's being combined to make honey, right? So this is why honey is one of those substances which is actually really good for the immune system. We got to remember, where does it come from? It comes from flowers, right? Okay, so this is not Chinese medicine, but we're looking at using things for multiple purposes and to keep in mind, right? We're getting creative. Looking at what can you use, what has a multiple purpose. Preparation H, right? It's got two key ingredients. One of them is the phenylephrine, which shrinks, has a way of shrinking. So for bleeding, it's used for hemorrhoids, right? It also has the promethazine, which is a topical analgesic, which is actually great for itching and rashes. Now, there are different kinds. You'd have to look. Even there's a preparation H that just has the a little bit of hydrocortisone on it. So this is like, wow, what are you going to do if you've got like a bug bite? What can you do? Well, you can also use a little bit of the preparation H, right? It's going to bring the swelling down. It's going to be cooling. The one that is the suppository is really just made of cocoa butter, right? It's pretty natural cocoa butter, and then the phenylephrine, which shrinks has a shrinks the blood vessels, right? So that's something in the event of a bug bite, you could probably use it, safe for kids, but check. You could just take it. It's like a little bit of a thing, and you could just rub it on, and it's gonna like help with the kids. Now, this is a multiple purpose thing. People have been using it for, under their eyes. You might even, if you have little varicosities or spider nevis on the swollen feet, you could probably use a little bit of that. What else is it used? Yes, and bug bites, right? So those are things. Just be creative, right? Okay. Well, this is something, and the reason I decided like preparation H, because interesting, I remembered back in the late 80s, that there were these headlines about Preparation H being a target for cocaine addicts. So this had to do with like some of the things that are shoplifted from pharmacies. And what they found was like cocaine and heroin addicts were stealing Preparation H and using it for their inflamed their noses and the places where they were injecting, which was actually pretty interesting. But then later on, so I think it was like 87, later on, we started to look at it became like the number 9 in the most stolen things from retail shelves, right? So that actually caught my attention, like Preparation H, one of the number 1 things that shoplifted, right? And then by 2005, yeah, it ended up being on the number 9 list of the most shoplifted items. And this is, you start to look at, these are people that are kind of desperate and they get creative, right? Need create causes, creativity, right? You got to be creative. Like, what can I do to, I'm in pain. Okay, so what I would love to know are, what are your hacks? What are some of the things that you do? Maybe you tell your patients to try something, do something. Oftentimes, a patient will come to you and say, "Hey, I was doing this thing." And I was like, "Ah, really? Why?" And find that very, very interesting, right? Like, why would you do that? So I tend to look into it. I want to know more. There's a lot of information. Another suggestion is go back uh, into your books. Start looking up some of these formulas. Actually, individual herbs are great. Um, I didn't have time to talk about using things like magnets and stuff like that, the hand magnets, but that's something we can do another time, as a way to treat certain conditions, especially they're non-needling, so you can teach your patients, right? All right, hopefully, I want to hear your hacks. If you want any more information, you can definitely reach out to me. And let's see, I know next week, join us next week with Matt Callison and Brian Lau. They're going to be your host. I have done the training with Matt twice. I did the whole sports medicine training. They do fantastic job. You learn all about anatomy and physiology. You really get a good understanding of what's going on under the skin. You'll be a much better practitioner at treating sports injuries and really understanding needle depth and really what is there. And so I highly recommend taking their training. I highly recommend that you also go and tap into next week's American Acupuncture Council broadcast. All right. Thank you.